The observation deck of Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy as Commander Velthera watched the empty space through the massive viewport. His four eyes blinked slowly, trying to calm his racing hearts. Today would change everything. The Galactic Council had spent 8 months preparing for this moment, the first official meeting with the humans. "Sir, detecting hyperspace signatures," announced Science Officer Krethai, his tentacles dancing across the control panels. "They're coming out of jump now." Velthera straightened his ceremonial robes and checked his translator device one final time. The Council had prepared extensively for this meeting. They expected the humans to arrive in an elegant diplomatic vessel, something sleek and peaceful that would show their civilized nature. After all, every species that joined the Galactic Council followed the same pattern, sending their most beautiful ships filled with gifts and peaceful intentions. The space in front of them rippled like water. And then it happened. A monster emerged from hyperspace. The ship that appeared was so massive that it blocked out the stars behind it. Velthera had to step back from the viewport as the enormous vessel drifted closer. This wasn't a diplomatic ship. This was a weapon of war that could destroy entire worlds. "By the ancient void," whispered Krethai, his voice shaking as he read the sensor data. "Commander, that ship is 20 kilometers long. The energy readings, it could crack a planet in half." Other alien diplomats in the observation deck began making worried sounds. Ambassador Krixtal's scales turned pale blue with fear. The insect-like representative from the hive worlds started clicking rapidly, their species' sign of extreme distress. "Is this some kind of joke?" asked Counselor Zarnia, her voice high with panic. "They bring a warship to a peace meeting?" The human vessel hung in space like a sleeping giant. Weapon ports lined its hull like glowing eyes. Fighter bays dotted its surface like wounds. Energy readings showed power levels that could fuel an entire space station for years. Velthera forced himself to remain calm, though his hands were shaking. Perhaps this is their way of showing strength. Some species do this. Or maybe they're planning to attack us, muttered another diplomat. The communication system crackled to life. A human voice, speaking in their strange language, filled the observation deck. The translation came a moment later. "Nexus Prime, this is Captain Lee Hyun of the UES Thunder Mountain. We're requesting permission to begin deployment procedures." Deployment procedures? The words hit Velthera like a physical blow. The humans were planning to deploy something. Troops? Weapons? Was this an invasion disguised as a diplomatic mission? "Human vessel," Velthera replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "We were expecting diplomatic representatives, not this." There was a pause. When the human captain spoke again, he sounded confused. "Sir, we are the diplomatic mission. We received your emergency signal about the Kepler 442b situation. We're here to help with the crisis." Velthera's translator made several confused beeping sounds. The Kepler 442b situation? That was the plague world on the edge of Council space, the planet where millions were dying from an unknown disease, the world that the Council had decided was too expensive to save. "Captain Lee," Velthera said slowly, "the Council sent no emergency signal about Kepler 442b. Another pause. "Sir, we detected the distress calls from that world 3 weeks ago. Our ships have been traveling at maximum speed to get here. Are you saying the Council isn't planning to help those people?" The alien diplomats looked at each other in confusion. The humans had traveled across the galaxy because they heard distress calls from a world that wasn't even their own, a world that the Council had written off as a lost cause. "Captain," Ambassador Krixtal spoke up, "that world is beyond saving. The plague has spread too far. Our best scientists calculated that any rescue mission would cost more resources than the planet is worth." The silence that followed was long and uncomfortable. "I see," Captain Lee finally said. His voice was cold now. "Well, Ambassador, we calculate things differently." Through the viewport, the massive human warship began to change. Lights flickered along its hull as systems came online. The enormous hangar bays that housed fighter squadrons started to open slowly. like the mouth of some great beast preparing to feed. The alien diplomats pressed closer to the viewport, terrified and fascinated. What were the humans about to unleash? All diplomatic stations, this is Thunder Mountain. Captain Lee's voice returned to the communications channel. We're beginning humanitarian deployment in 30 minutes. Any vessel that wants to assist is welcome to join us. Any vessel that tries to stop us will be asked politely to move aside. Humanitarian deployment? Velthara's translator was working overtime, trying to make sense of the human words. The hangar bays continued to open, and strange shapes began to emerge from the depths of the warship. But these weren't fighters, or bombers, or troops. These looked like medical shuttles? What are they doing? Whispered Kretai. As if he had heard the question, Captain Lee's voice filled the observation deck one more time. Nexus Prime, be advised. We're converting from military to humanitarian operations. The people of Kepler 442b are going to live. That's not a request, that's a promise. The alien diplomats stared in amazement as the most powerful warship they had ever seen began to transform before their eyes. The alien diplomats stood frozen at the viewport, watching something that should have been impossible. The massive human warship's hangar bays were fully open now, and what emerged defied everything they knew about military vessels, medical shuttles. Hundreds of them. Small white craft with red crosses painted on their sides poured out of the Thunder Mountain like insects from a disturbed nest. But these weren't attack craft. They were clearly built for healing, not hurting. This cannot be real, whispered Ambassador Krixtal, his scales now shifting from blue to green with confusion. That is a warship. Where are the fighters? Where are the bombers? Commander Velthara's four eyes blinked rapidly as he tried to process what he was seeing. Kretai, scan those small craft. What are they carrying? The science officer's tentacles flew across his controls. Sir, the readings are strange. I'm detecting medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, and food synthesizers. There are no weapons on those shuttles at all. A new voice joined the communication channel. It was female, speaking with calm authority. Nexus Prime, this is Dr. Park Soo-jin, Chief Medical Officer of the Thunder Mountain. We have 200 medical shuttles heading to Kepler 442b's surface. Each shuttle carries emergency medical supplies, portable surgery units, and enough medicine to treat 5,000 patients. Dr. Park continued speaking as the alien diplomats listened in stunned silence. Our fabrication bays are currently producing antibiotics and antiviral medications at maximum capacity. We estimate we can manufacture enough medicine for the entire planetary population within 72 hours. Fabrication bays? Velthara knew enough about human military vessels to understand what those were. They were supposed to make ammunition and spare parts for weapons, not medicine for sick aliens. Dr. Park, Ambassador Krixtal managed to say, our records show that the Thunder Mountain is a military assault carrier. How are you producing medical supplies? The human doctor's laugh came through the translator as a series of musical notes. You're absolutely right, Ambassador. She was built to destroy enemy fleets across 3 star systems. Today she's saving lives instead. It turns out that the machines we use to build missiles work just fine for building medical injectors. Captain Lee's voice joined the conversation. Ambassador, we've converted our Marine barracks to house refugees. Each barracks can hold 1,000 people safely. Our weapon storage areas are now supply warehouses filled with food, water, and clothing. Another human voice spoke up. This is Lieutenant Kim Min-ho, Logistics Officer. Sir, we've also converted our fighter maintenance bays into temporary schools. The children on Kepler 442b haven't had proper education in 6 months because of the plague. We brought teachers and learning materials. The alien diplomats stared at each other in complete bewilderment. Schools? In a warship? The very idea made no sense according to everything they knew about military operations. Wait, Counselor Zarnia said, her voice high with confusion. You brought teachers? To a plague world? In a military vessel? Yes, ma'am, came the reply, from Kim Min-ho. We brought doctors, teachers, engineers, farmers, and entertainment specialists. The people down there need more than just medicine. They need hope. Through the viewport, more human vessels were arriving. smaller ships that were clearly military destroyers and cruisers, but they too were launching medical shuttles and supply, craft instead of weapons. "Commander," Kretai said, his voice filled with wonder, "I'm reading massive energy transfers from the human ships. They're redirecting power from their weapon systems to manufacturing equipment and life support systems." Dr. Park's voice came through the communicator again. "Nexus Prime. We're also deploying our mobile surgical units. What used to be our torpedo launch tubes are now perfect for sending down emergency operating rooms. Amazing what you can do when you stop thinking about what something was designed for and start thinking about what it could do instead." The humans were using torpedo tubes to launch hospitals. Velthara felt his world spinning. Everything he understood about military operations was being turned upside down. "Dr. Park," he said slowly, "why are you doing this? Kepler 442b is not a human world. These people are not your species. Your government spent enormous resources to bring a fleet here for people you have never met." The communication channel was quiet for a moment. When Dr. Park spoke again, her voice was gentle but firm. "Commander, we received distress calls from dying people. That's all we needed to know. It doesn't matter what species they are, or which government claims their world. When people are suffering and we have the power to help, we help. That's what makes us human." Captain Lee added, "Besides, Commander, we had these ships just sitting around doing training exercises. Seemed like a waste when we could be saving lives instead, just sitting around." The aliens looked at each other in amazement. The humans spoke about their most powerful warships like they were tools in a toolbox, ready to be used for whatever job needed doing. "This is impossible," muttered Ambassador Krixtall. "You cannot simply convert military vessels into hospital ships overnight." "Why not?" asked Captain Lee. "We have power generators, we have cargo space, we have communication systems, and we have smart people who know how to solve problems. Everything else is just details." As the alien diplomats watched, the human fleet continued its impossible transformation. The most dangerous weapons in known space were becoming instruments of mercy, and somehow the humans made it look easy. 3 days had passed since the human fleet arrived, and Commander Velthara still couldn't believe what he was witnessing. Every few hours he would return to the observation deck, convinced that what he was seeing must be some kind of elaborate trick or dream. It wasn't. The Thunder Mountain had become something that shouldn't exist. Where once there had been a warship capable of ending civilizations, there was now a floating city of hope and healing. Chief Engineer Han Woo-sung stood in what had been the carrier's primary weapons control center, explaining the conversion to a group of bewildered alien technical experts. The massive room that once coordinated planet-killing strikes now hummed with fabrication equipment working around the clock. "These machines here," Han said, pointing to a row of humming devices, "normally make armor-piercing shells for our main guns. Today they're making water purification tablets. Same basic process, different materials." Engineer Torval from the Centauri Republic stared at the machines in confusion. "But the precision requirements are completely different. Medical tablets need exact measurements. Weapons can be approximate." Han smiled and patted one of the machines. "That's the beauty of it. Weapons actually need more precision than medicine. If your shell is off by even a tiny amount, it misses the target. These machines can make medical supplies in their sleep." Nearby, another set of machines was producing something that made the alien engineers gasp. Perfect artificial organs, grown from stem cells and shaped by technology that was supposed to create guidance systems for missiles. "Impossible," whispered Dr. Klixnar, the Council's chief medical scientist. "Those organs are more advanced than anything our best hospitals can produce. How are you doing this in a military vessel?" "Same way we grow targeting computers," Han replied. "You start with basic materials, you follow the pattern, and you let the machines do the work. The only difference is what pattern you tell them to follow." In the converted fighter bays, Dr. Choi Yu-jin was treating patients from 6 different alien species. The massive hangar that once housed instruments of war now held hundreds of medical beds filled with plague victims who were rapidly recovering. Ambassador Krixtall found her checking on a young Zephyrian child, whose breathing had improved dramatically since arriving on the human ship. "Doctor," the ambassador said through his translator, "our best scientists said Zephyrian lung rot was incurable. The disease attacks their unique respiratory system in ways we don't understand. How did you cure it?" Dr. Choi looked up from her mo, patient, exhaustion clear on her face, but also satisfaction. "We didn't cure it, Ambassador, we figured it out." "What's the difference?" "A cure means we understood the disease from the beginning. We didn't. When this little one arrived, we had never seen anything like her condition." Dr. Choi gently adjusted the child's breathing mask. "But we have a biochemistry lab that used to analyze alien weapon residues. Same equipment, different samples." The ambassador's translator made confused sounds. "You used weapons analysis equipment to study a disease?" "Chemical analysis is chemical analysis," Dr. Choi said simply. "Whether you're studying poison gas or plague bacteria, you're looking at molecules and how they interact. Our weapons lab just became a disease lab. Took us 18 hours to understand the infection and 6 more hours to create the cure." In another section of the ship, Commander Cho Tae-young was supervising the arrival of more human vessels through the massive hangar bay. Each ship that docked brought more surprises that defied military logic. The destroyer, Morning Star, had been completely gutted and rebuilt as a mobile water treatment facility. Its weapons had been removed and replaced with purification systems that could clean the water supply for an entire continent. The cruiser, Steadfast, was now a floating communication center, its missile launchers replaced with powerful transmitters that kept refugee families connected across multiple worlds. "Your people," Ambassador Crixtal said to Commander Cho as they watched human engineers work alongside alien refugees to assemble prefabricated housing. "They seem to enjoy chaos." Commander Cho laughed as he watched a human sailor teaching a group of alien children how to play a simple Earth game using parts from a disassembled targeting computer. "Not chaos, Ambassador. Creativity. We see a problem, we solve it with whatever we have available. That housing they're building? The panels came from armor plating we removed from the hull. The joints are made from missile guidance fins. The power systems are torpedo batteries." "But this is so inefficient," the ambassador protested. "Surely it would be better to send proper civilian ships designed for this work." "Maybe," Commander Cho admitted. "But we don't have 3 months to build civilian ships and train civilian crews. We had these ships, we had these crews, and we had people who needed help right now. Sometimes good enough today beats perfect next year." The ambassador watched as human crew members worked alongside refugees from a dozen different species, all of them focused on the same goal despite not sharing a common language or culture. "Your crew doesn't seem bothered by working with aliens they've never met before," he observed. "Why would they be?" Commander Cho asked. "Pain is universal, fear is universal, hope is universal. Everything else is just details we can figure out as we go." Above them, the massive reactors that once powered weapons capable of cracking moons now provided electricity for hospitals, schools, and manufacturing centers that were saving an entire world. The impossible had become routine, and somehow the humans made it all look easy. By the end of the first week, the numbers made no sense to anyone in the Galactic Council. According to every calculation, every computer model, and every expert analysis, what the humans had accomplished was mathematically impossible. The plague that had been killing thousands of people every day on Kepler 442b was completely stopped. The entire population had been fed, housed, and given medical care. Reconstruction of damaged cities had already begun, and somehow the humans were doing it all with converted warships. Ambassador Crixtal found Captain Lee standing in the observation lounge of the Thunder Mountain, watching supply shuttles carry the last batch of medicine down to the planet's surface. The captain looked tired but satisfied. "Captain," the ambassador said, settling into a chair that had been designed for his species, "our computers have been running calculations for 3 days. They keep giving us the same answer, and that answer makes no sense." Captain Lee smiled and poured himself a cup of coffee from a machine that used to dispense ammunition. "What do the computers say, Ambassador?" "They say that saving Kepler 442b should have required 50 specialized relief ships. 2,000 trained civilian personnel, and enough resources to fund a small space colony for 10 years. The ambassador paused, looking confused. Instead, you did it with 12 military vessels and crews that were trained to fight wars, not save lives. Maybe your computers are asking the wrong questions, suggested Commander Park G1, who had joined them at the observation window. What do you mean? Park pointed down at the planet where lights were beginning to appear in cities that had been dark for months. Your computers probably asked, what is the right way to solve this problem? We asked, what ways can we solve this problem with what we have right now? The ambassador's translator struggled with the concept. But surely there must be correct procedures for disaster relief, proper equipment, trained specialists, approved methods. Captain Lee laughed, gently. Ambassador, when people are dying, there's no time for proper procedures. There's only time for whatever works. Lieutenant Song Hye-jin, who was monitoring communications from the planet, looked up from her console. Captain, we just received a message from the Kepler 442b government. They want to know how we trained our people to work with so many different alien species so quickly. What did you tell them? Asked Park. I told them we didn't train for this at all. We just figured it out as we went along. The ambassador's scales shifted to a bright orange color that indicated extreme confusion. You had no training for interspecies? Medical care? No protocols for alien biology? No preparation for dealing with unknown diseases? Dr. Yang Ji-hoon, who had been working in the medical bays for 18 hours straight, joined the conversation. His uniform was stained with various alien bodily fluids, but he looked proud. Ambassador, we had training for human medicine. When we encountered alien patients, we did what we always do. We learned fast and adapted faster. But the risk, the ambassador started to protest. The risk of trying was smaller than the risk of doing nothing, Dr. Yang said firmly. When that little Zephyrian girl was dying from lung rot, I had two choices. Try something that might not work, or watch her die for certain. Easy choice. Through the viewport, they could see the destroyer Morning Star still orbiting the planet, its water purification systems working continuously to clean the planet's contaminated water supply. Your people, the ambassador said slowly. They don't seem to worry about following rules. We follow the rules that matter, Captain Lee replied. Rule number 1, help people who need help. Rule number 2, use whatever tools you have available. Rule number 3, when the old rules don't work, make new ones. Commander Park nodded in agreement. Ambassador, your people spent 2 months debating whether Kepler 442b was worth saving. We spent 2 days figuring out how to save it. Which approach actually helped the people who were dying? The ambassador was quiet for a long moment, watching the human crew members below as they continued their impossible work. Your military doctrine must be very flexible. It has to be, Captain Lee said. Wars don't follow textbooks. Emergencies don't wait for proper equipment. People don't stop needing help just because you don't have the right tools. Lieutenant Kim Min-ho, who had been organizing the temporary schools in the converted fighter bays, approached the group with a report. Captain, the Kepler 442b Education Ministry wants to know if we can leave some of our teaching equipment behind when we go. Apparently, our improvised classrooms are better than what they had before the plague. What did we make the classrooms from? Asked Park. Fighter cockpit simulators mostly. Turns out that equipment designed to teach people complex three-dimensional thinking works really well for general education too. The ambassador stared at the human officers in amazement. You created schools from fighter plane simulators? Why not? Kim shrugged. They had screens, computers, comfortable seats, and interactive controls. Everything you need for a classroom. We just changed the software. Captain Lee finished his coffee and stood up. Ambassador, I think the difference between your people and mine is simple. You see a fighter simulator and think, this is for training pilots. We see a fighter simulator and think this is a computer with a chair and a screen. What else could we use it for? As the ambassador watched the humans continue their work, he began to understand something fundamental about their species. They didn't just solve problems. They redefined what the problems were in the first place. 6 months later, Kepler 442b was not just alive, but thriving. The planet that the Galactic Council had written off as hopeless was now being used as an example of successful disaster recovery. The humans had left behind equipment, training programs, and most surprisingly, a group of volunteers who had chosen to stay and help the local population build their own emergency response systems. The Thunder Mountain was back to its original military configuration, but nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. Ambassador Krixtal stood in the great assembly hall of the Galactic Council, facing representatives from over 200 worlds. His scales had settled into a deep purple color that indicated serious thought and concern. "Fellow councilors," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, "we must discuss what we learned from the Kepler 442b incident. The humans have introduced something new to our understanding of power and capability." Councillor Vexhai from the Rigel Coalition leaned forward in his floating chair. "Military power, you mean? Their weapons technology?" "No," Krixtal replied, firmly. "Something more dangerous than weapons. Something more useful than the most advanced technology. They have shown us adaptive power." The hall filled with confused murmurs as hundreds of different species tried to understand what the ambassador meant. "Explain," demanded High Counselor Zarnia, her crystalline voice cutting through the noise. Krixtal activated the holographic display at the center of the hall. Images of the human fleet appeared, showing the massive conversion process that had turned warships into hospitals. The humans took instruments designed for destruction and turned them into instruments of healing in less than 72 hours. They didn't just use tools, they reimagined what those tools could become. The images showed human engineers working alongside alien refugees, medical equipment being manufactured in weapons factories, and schools being created from fighter cockpits. When faced with a problem that our best minds declared impossible to solve, they didn't accept that judgment. They looked at the problem from a completely different direction and found solutions that our computers never calculated because our computers were asking the wrong questions. Counselor Mortek from the Andromeda sector raised a tentacle. "But surely this was inefficient. Improvised solutions cannot match properly designed systems." The holographic display changed to show the final results. A completely recovered planet, millions of lives saved, and total cost figures that made the assembled counselors gasp. "The humans accomplished in 1 week what our projections said would take 2 years and cost 100 times more resources," Krixtal continued. "Their inefficient, improvised solutions worked better than our most carefully planned relief operations." The hall fell silent as the implications began to sink in. If the humans could so easily convert military assets for civilian purposes, what did that say about their true capabilities? "There's something else," Krixtal said, changing the display again. "I spent weeks studying their methods, trying to understand how they made decisions so quickly. I discovered that they don't think like us." "How do they think?" asked Counselor Leisha from the Vega system. "They don't see categories the way we do. We see a warship and think weapon. They see a warship and think big space with power generators, manufacturing capacity, and transportation ability. We see a torpedo tube and think delivery system for explosives. They see a torpedo tube and think fast delivery system for anything that fits." The display showed human crew members laughing as they used missile guidance computers to teach alien children mathematics, and torpedo launch systems to send medical supplies to disaster zones. "But what about military discipline?" asked General Torval. "Surely their fighting effectiveness must suffer from all this creativity." Krixtal's scales shifted to a dark red color that indicated serious warning. "General, that's exactly what makes them so dangerous. Their military isn't separate from their civilian capabilities. It's all the same thing. Every human ship, every human crew member, every piece of human equipment can be instantly converted from peaceful to military use." The hall erupted in worried conversations as military representatives from dozens of worlds realized what this meant. A human hospital ship could become a troop transport in hours, Krixtal continued. A human cargo vessel could become a weapons platform. A human research station could become a military base. They don't build different things for different purposes. They build adaptable things that can serve any purpose. High Counselor Zarnia called for silence. Ambassador, what do you recommend? We need to completely change how we think about the humans, Krixtal replied. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade agreement, every interaction with them should remember this. They are not like us. They don't accept limitations. They don't follow our rules about what things are supposed to do. The display showed one final image. The Thunder Mountain, in its current military configuration, looking exactly like the warship it had always been. When they arrived at Kepler 442b, we saw a supercarrier and thought about its weapons. They saw a supercarrier and thought about its possibilities. That difference in thinking is more powerful than any weapon they could build. Counselor Vexhai asked the question that everyone was thinking. So what happens when they decide to expand their territory? When they want something we have? When they see us as a problem to be solved? Ambassador Krixtal's scales turned completely black. The color of fear and respect combined. Then we better hope they see us as a problem worth solving peacefully. Because if they decide to solve us the other way, we'll never see it coming until our own weapons are being used against us in ways we never imagined. The Great Hall fell, completely silent as 200 different species contemplated a universe where the impossible had become routine, and the humans were just getting started.